Welcome to Fear and Greed's Sunday feature. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Adam Lang.
Good morning, Michael.
Adam, I'm looking forward to today's interview, but I just need to reflect very briefly on yesterday's weekend edition. Wasn't that a glorious victory by me?
I love that you proclaim praise for yourself. It's wonderful. It was a good win, Michael. I think it was a fair win. Of course, Sean didn't, so it was something of a regrettable incident in my mind. That first time we've been together, the three of us, for ages, and I really did annoy Sean yesterday. Well, it's a consequence of being a judge, I think.
It actually made it all the more special to see how hard he took it.
Yeah,
when you ruled against him, it I don't know why. I took a great deal of pleasure from that. And anyway, look, I shouldn't dwell too much on it, especially I don't want to spoil anything. Admittedly, I have just spoiled the fact that I do win overall, but it is well worth going back and having a listen to it if you haven't heard it, because it's a lot of fun. And it was our first weekend edition altogether, again, after extended periods of leave and disruption, and we are all back, and we are back in the way that we should be, which is with a Michael Thompson victory.
Right. I would also have to just add a caution to it. There is a rather savoury story that Sean chose to advocate about himself and nude beaches, which was unexpected.
How about that? I cannot believe that Sean has been to a nude beach and had quite the experience at a nude beach. And so the fact that he just came out and told us that story in the podcast is worth a listen just for that alone.
Well, that was the thing that surprised me the most. It's like, it's fine, go ahead, if that's what you'd like to do. But to talk about it publicly, very brave.
Yeah, very honourable. I enjoyed that. Anyway, look, it was great to all be together yesterday for the weekend edition, and today's Sunday interview, because obviously what we want to do on the Sunday is kind of give some good listening. And we are, of course, working with Mumbrella to produce the weekly Mumbrellacast, which is a look at everything under the media and marketing umbrella. It comes out every Wednesday. And so this week was our first Mumbrellacast all together as a trio. See, I had to choose my words very carefully there, Adam, especially considering what we just talked about.
Thank you. So it really does cross over into a lot of business stories. Obviously, the biggest one and further to yesterday's referendum is The Voice. And, that is such an important discussion, and we had to keep that rightfully a judgment-free zone. But in the Mumbrellacast, we talk about a different aspect of it. The branding, the challenge of marketing a yes and a no campaign. How have they gone? And after this event, of course, what will we learn from it? And where does this go? So it's a really good discussion. And, of course, what another big week for Qantas. The changes in the board, including the announcement by Richard Goyder that he will step down at the end of 2024. So there's some big business stories within there.
Yeah, it is a really good episode of the Mumbrellacast. I hope you enjoy it. We're in the final few days of campaigning before the Voice referendum. Can last-minute advertising really sway votes? Also today, the chair and 3 directors to go in a major board shake-up at Qantas. Oztam appoints a new CEO. And what 2 of Australia's best journalists have in common. Welcome to the Mumbrellacast, a discussion of everything under Australia's media and marketing umbrella. I'm Michael Thompson, and I'm joined today by, first, Adam Lang. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Michael.
And Sean Aylmer too. Sean, good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon, Michael and Adam.
The main story today, I think, is, just purely because of the timing of this. We are just a few days out now from the referendum on an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Saturday is, of course, the day. And the polls are all indicating, and have been indicating for a while, that the no vote will most likely win. But we're now seeing a real flurry of advertising activity from the Yes campaign. Now, Clemenger BBDO, on behalf of Yes 23, has released the latest iteration of its Yes Makes It Possible campaign. And that's now come out just 4 days out, right? And you can see it on the Mumbrella website. And Lauren McNamara has written about this for Mumbrella. Now, importantly, while looking from the outside, you might say that this actually looks quite last minute, because it's not long, obviously, until we go to vote, but it was planned that way. And Clemenger actually told Lauren that this campaign launch was always planned as part of the overarching strategy. Now, last week, the agency did launch another campaign that took a slightly different approach, highlighting the difference in life outcomes for Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. So there's been a lot of activity in the final week and a half. And just one more point, really, I suppose, to add a little bit of context to this. Yesterday, Mumbrella had some exclusive polling data from Strategic Insights business Pollinate, and that showed that 18% of Aussies are still undecided, while 35% plan to vote yes and 47% intend to vote no. Interestingly, I suppose the sentiment of the undecided voters might be a little bit encouraging for the Yes campaign, because 89% of those who say they are undecided agree with the statement that I hope the voice will make things better for Australia, and 88% agree that I hope the voice will make things better for First Nations people. More than 2 million people have already voted. What do you both think? I mean, clearly we're talking here about that 18% of Australians who say that they are still undecided. Do these kind of last-minute targeted campaigns have what it takes to sway votes, do you think?
I think the yes side is pushing it uphill. I think we need to remember that a referendum passes if you get, it's what they call the double majority. So the majority of Australians need to vote yes, it's 50%, simple. And the majority of states, so that's 4 of the 6 states, need to vote yes. Queensland and Western Australia will vote no. It's very, very difficult, based on the polling we've seen, to think that they will vote yes. Therefore, you end up with Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales and South Australia all got to vote a majority yes. With that as context, given the polling and what you just said then, Michael, means 16% of that 18%, so whatever percentage that is, 90% of the uncertainties need to vote yes. And no value judgment here. We're neither here for or against, in this conversation at least. Obviously, personally, we are one way or another. They're not going to get 90% of the undecideds to vote that way, no matter how good the campaign is, particularly when at least 2.2 million people have already voted. That was Monday's figure. The Australian Electoral Commission came out with that number. So I don't think there's any chance. What do you think, Adam?
Oh, Sean, I think that's right. The only optimistic note I would add.
You are an optimist, Adam. You are an optimist, a spreadsheet optimist.
Well, and this is really, there's optimism in the data, because almost like audience ratings, it's a representative sample. That's what polling is. And so it is possible that the polling and the margin of error is wrong. I don't think it's going to be wrong enough to change the position you've just stated, Sean. I don't. But it is possible that the people who are thinking one way might change their mind. It's people that are undecided will still be undecided. So how this plays out is going to be so interesting. I think it's going to go the way of most referendums in the country. And so, then what happens? We find out Saturday people vote, then we move on, we get the result. But where to from there, and that's really interesting to me.
I wonder about the advertising spend from the Yes campaign. Has it been effective? Are advertisements, given that this is a politically charged atmosphere, do they actually make much of a difference, I wonder?
I think on the spend side of it, it's actually interesting seeing then what a low budget piece is capable of doing. And there was an example of this. It was Briggs, aka Adam Briggs, aka Senator Briggs, Australian rapper, goes by a number of different names, clearly, appeared in a campaign a week ago. Very different style. Now, he's been very outspoken during the campaign, but he featured and he actually kind of generated and kind of came up with this and worked on this campaign himself. Very different style. It is just him talking to 2 young women. Seems quite low budget, very simple, about how it's not hard just to Google the voice and find out what it means. And interestingly, according to The Guardian, this is a 3-minute clip and it's already been viewed something like 5 million times already. Wow. It's gone viral and it's shot in a pub. Like it doesn't get much more simple. I mean, it helps as well that I think Nash Edgerton shot it as the director, so kind of had a fairly kind of big name director to help with this. But it just probably shows that campaigns don't need to necessarily be flashy to be quite effective in terms of reach, kind of hitting 5 million people. And so arguably the cost would be quite conservative there.
So two things from my point of view. One is I do think advertising works. I've really enjoyed seeing the ads.
In this campaign, so I agree advertising works, but I'm talking about a politically charged campaign.
Yeah.
Advertising, is it as effective as selling a fast-moving consumer good or selling a car?
Well, I think it is in the sense that it seeks to inform, and I think most of the ads we've seen do that. And I would say that Briggs, who I think is a great rapper, Bad Apples, if you haven't heard the tune, is worth a listen. Is
so very Adam. So very Adam.
Well, he's really good, and he's expert, obviously, songwriting, if you look at it, and particularly rapping is storytelling, and he's encapsulated in this 3.5-minute video. It is superbly shot, scripted, everything about it I think is brilliant, and I think it does get the message across. So I think it has an effect. I stand by the previous comments, though. I don't think it's going to have enough of effect to affect an outcome of yes on Saturday.
There was another interesting opinion piece on Mumbrella yesterday about why the Yes campaign, in the words of the editorial, is failing. That it is, number one, failing to make the case for change. Number two, it is preaching to the converted. And number three, leading with the wrong type of emotion, and referencing then the John Farnham, You're the Voice campaign that we saw come out a few weeks ago, which feels like a very long time ago now in the campaign, and that actually had a negative effect on voters. It did not have the desired effect at all. In fact, it kind of went the other way, because what it supposedly did was emphasize to potentially undecided voters just how significant the decision was, that this was a major, major change and a very momentous moment in Australian history. And in doing so, might have actually made people more nervous about making a change, and in doing so led with the wrong type of emotion. I thought that was an interesting perspective.
I actually thought it was a bit preachy, that. I remember during the referendum for the Republic, and John Howard was Prime Minister at the time, he didn't support it, but he came out and he said, personally, I don't support it, but you do what you want. And the genius in that was that people looked at the Prime Minister. He wasn't preaching to me. He wasn't telling me to vote no to the Republic. But hey, the Prime Minister's voting no. Maybe I should vote no. What this campaign, the idea of coming out and saying you must vote yes, and I think the current Prime Minister has fallen into this trap a little bit. I think some of the yes campaigning has been a bit preachy, and I think The Voice is an example of that. That's why some of the social media stuff has probably been more effective from my point of view.
I agree with that, and I think that the status of these sorts of changes is that it is always difficult to encourage change. So that is a challenge to begin with. It's easier to resist rather than to change. And I think you've got to do a lot of convincing to get people to be compelled to want to change. And so I think that was always going to be difficult. I have to say within that, though, I have to observe that the No campaign has been very effective at saying why they disagree with it. And the Yes campaign has not been, in my view, as effective at saying why we should change. And so I think there'll be some picking over the nature of the strategy of their campaign and the execution after this event. And that'll be really rich territory for us to look at, for experts in the field of that we're talking about, of media and marketing, how this could have gone differently. Because the question doesn't go away, even if the referendum doesn't answer it in the yes camp.
Can I just ask you one last question, and then we'll move on to another topic? But we've seen kind of two very effective campaigns or quite effective campaigns roll out kind of very close to the end. And it is worth having a look at on the Mumbrella website at the campaign that launched today. But really then the Briggs piece that we talked about that has already been seen 5 million times. Do you think that now that we're kind of seeing some of these more effective ones, perhaps moving away from the, as you said, Sean, perhaps a little bit more preachy kind of campaigns earlier in the piece, that if the referendum wasn't this Saturday and was in, say, 2 weeks or a month's time, that it would be a slightly different story? Is this too late to have an effect now?
I think timing people have only focused on the referendum seriously probably in the last couple of weeks, and they'd only ever focus on the referendum in the last couple of weeks. My kids are asking me about it now with a few days to go, but they haven't thought much about it until now. So I don't know that the timing would have made that much difference, Michael. Is that like a block? In theatre sports, when someone asks a question, no matter whether you agree or disagree, you're supposed to go with it. I think I've just done the opposite, Michael, so I apologise for that. That is an official block.
That is quite all right. And Adam, are you? You're the recipient of the block here. You've got nothing to work with.
No, never too late. Never too late.
Oh,
there you go.
Oh,
excellent.
See, again, Adam, the eternal optimist.
Yes.
Seems a good point to finish this bit up on. We'll come back in a moment and get into a few of the other stories that are on Mumbrella this week. Now, we're each picking out a story that Mumbrella has covered this week and bringing it to the studio for discussion. And because it's a bit of a race, really, to see who goes first, to see who gets to pick the best story. And I've opted to go first this week so that I get what I think is the best story here, and that is the breaking news today about Qantas. And Nathan Jolly was writing about this one on Mumbrella. Chairman Richard Goyder and 3 directors are all going in part of a major board shake-up. So we've got 1 director retiring next month, 2 retiring in February, and then Richard Goyder will retire prior to the AGM late next year, so not for a little while yet. Now, just a little bit of a recap, because it's impossible to talk about this without just setting the scene a little bit of just how much of a PR disaster Qantas has been going through over the last... I was looking at it, I'm like, it really is only about 6 weeks that all this has been unfolding, because... just prior to that, we were talking about, $2.5 billion profit. But then straight after that, you had the then CEO, Alan Joyce, appearing at the cost of living Senate hearing. And it just all kind of unraveling from there, because you had the ongoing saga over COVID credits for flights. Then the ACCC taking legal action over allegedly selling tickets for cancelled flights, and questions over Qantas's influence on the government's decision to block Qatar Airways' additional flights. The High Court upholding that the airline had illegally sacked 1,700 ground handlers during the pandemic. The list really does go on and on. And you had then CEO Alan Joyce retiring early and Vanessa Hudson moving into the role. Adam, I know that you have been talking about, and we've talked about Qantas a few times now on the Mumbrellacast. So I'm asking you a question to which I already know the answer. Was the board shake-up inevitable?
Yes. And it's not over, in my view.
Ooh. Let's go to kind of board accountability here. Why was this inevitable?
Okay, so the board's role is oversight. And for all the reasons you just listed, I do not think the board can be said to have done its job. And I don't believe it can be said it's done its job well. And in that case, you have long-term servants in roles on boards, on this board, the Qantas board, that were there providing oversight while all of this happened. And I think that accountability has to be present. And so it isn't. I think, too, that Richard Goyder announcing that he'd step down at the end of next year, that's a long way away. Feels like accountability has come too late at that point. So I just don't think that this is the end of it. Between now and the AGM, and we said this on the Mumbrellacast last time we spoke about it, I think we have to watch this space right up until the AGM, because I don't think it's finished yet.
Sean, why would it... again, so whenever I have this opportunity to pepper kind of questions at the two of you, because obviously, Sean, you're a very experienced business journalist, and Adam, you have kind of run an ASX listed company. So I'm kind of like, I've got a good opportunity here to expand my own knowledge. Like, why would Richard Goyder be looking at a 12-month kind of period for this? Is that unusual that we'd be flagging it so far out if it's designed to kind of help give the brand a fresh start?
This is the resignation you have when you're not having a resignation, the Clayton resignation. Richard Goyder is royalty in corporate Australia, right? He ran Wesfarmers for many years. He's the chair of Woodside Energy, one of the biggest company, a top 10 company. He is the chair, I think, of the AFL Commission. I mean, you don't get more blue blood than the chair of the AFL Commission. A West Australian, very, very much part of the establishment. He came out and said, so next year I will step down. Now, next year, if you really want to, and he took responsibility for it, so credit where credit's due, That's fine. But if he's serious about it, why isn't he going in the next couple of months? I mean, personally, I actually don't think he should go. So I'm not actually arguing he should go. But on this thing that people are saying, well, Goyder is taking responsibility for it, I'm not so sure whether he is or not. I mean, he's not going for another 12 months. Now, the reason I don't think he should go is I think when you get a new CEO, you want a chair who's experienced and know what they're doing. And so to get a new chair and a new CEO within a couple of months, I do not think that's a good idea. I don't think that's a good idea for Qantas. I also think Goyder and Alan Joyce, incoming, Alan Joyce did a spectacular job for shareholders during the pandemic. They stuffed up the last 6 months more in a PR sense, but for shareholders, they did a great job and they got a lot of money out of government. You complain about that, but the government gave it to them. So, let's not be too harsh on them. Okay, they got greedy in the last few months. Where am I going to with all this? I don't think Goyder should go, but I accept that he's decided to go. He says, I'm taking responsibility for it, but he's not really because he's not going for 12 months.
The 12 months then, would that part of that be designed to help with that transition to the new CEO?
Yeah, presumably. It gives certainty and all that. Big investors would not be happy if the new CEO, Vanessa Hudson, stepped in and there was a new chair.
Yeah.
And so I think they're probably protecting that. So that is probably part of it. And Richard Goyder would be a very proud person. I'm sure he'd be hurt by all the criticism, but it's still a bit of a Clayton's resignation.
Okay. Then does it give Qantas then the fresh start that it needs? Or have we already kind of had enough of a fresh start just by changing to the new CEO?
Well, when Commonwealth Bank was in all sorts of trouble and Ian Narev was the CEO and they said, we're getting rid of Ian Narev, we're going to have a fresh start with Matt Common, who, of course, was a direct report to Ian Narev's. Yet somehow Commonwealth Bank has emerged from that as this different, better organisation in the public's perception. So I think when you have the former CFO taking over as CEO, it is quite possible that they can reinvent themselves as a much better organisation. Hudson herself is trying hard. I mean, isn't she flying economy? Isn't that what I read at some point?
She did once.
Did once.
A lot of photographers around for that one.
Yeah. The perception is important, and particularly with something that we all feel we own, like Qantas. So I think it probably is enough to reinvent themselves. Also, when air prices come down and people start flying again and all those post-COVID problems get sorted out, we're all going to love Qantas again, Michael. Let's face it.
Well, I was actually going to ask you about this, both of you really, because whether it is time for like a fresh take on marketing and advertising for Qantas, or whether it is just a case of improving the experience and lower airfares, flights running on time, bags not being lost, just kind of mastering those things. And if you can kind of get those right, then the experience will change. And does that become more important than the marketing of the new Qantas?
Yeah, Mike, I think it's a critical point. What we're talking about here is really an investor conversation, board governance and so on, but it does flow through to brand and right down to the nexus between, the customer and why they buy a ticket and fly on Qantas. So I think it does have an impact from a board branding level all the way through that business to business element, how we feel about Qantas. But when it comes down to the most critical things that you want as a customer, of course, it is, can I book a flight easily? Is it at a good price? Will it take off on time? And will that staff that are on it get me there safely and at least as good condition as I left?
Which is a bit tough after a 16-hour flight, but anyway, I'd like to see that, Adam.
Yeah, that's very true. But the flight itself, how the stewards and pilots engage with every single passenger is important. And so how they feel about their workplace is really important, and how that comes through at a customer service level. It's critical. So, yeah, you've got to get the pricing right and the options to book and arriving safely and in great condition. But also how you're made to feel on that flight is important. I think that will have to come through in the branding. I just don't think the beautiful ads of the choir singing, I Still Call Australia Home, they won't do it alone.
15 years ago, put a bunch of kids on Uluru, get them to sing Still Call Australia Home. We all felt good about Qantas. Different world now, different world.
We're so demanding.
We certainly are, aren't we? I have dominated enough with my story, and I've left you both with about 3 minutes each, which actually kind of feels about right. Adam, what would you like to nominate?
All right. Okay. So I'm going to go with one of my strong suits here in audience measurement. So OzTam has appointed a new CEO, the story by Nathan Jolly on Mumbrella today. So OzTam is the organisation responsible for measuring television viewing data and marketing it. And that, of course, includes broadcast TV, what we think of traditionally, and then online delivered broadcaster content, BVOD, all-screen total TV. So it's not an easy thing to do to measure all those different outputs. Doug Pfeiffer used to be head of that entity, and I used to work with Doug at Network 10. He is a very, very capable person and executive. He was terrific to work with. You know, the job of everyone, audience measurement in television, like radio, like news, etc., is find the win. And he was very good at doing that. And he was a really good colleague. I think he did a good job in difficult circumstances. So Karen Halligan comes in. She has got great credentials. I don't know Karen, but you can look at her achievements that she has been able to deliver through decades. She's got great experience. So I wish her very well for the role, and she seems well positioned. Sean, I got a question for you. You've done this sort of thing before, audience measurement, news mastheads, newspapers, online mastheads, and so on. Stakeholder management is one of the most difficult things. Now, think of this. Not only is Karen Halligan going to go in and run this entity, new to the role, she's got to manage 7 networks, James Warburton, 9 networks, Mike Sneesby, and Network 10's Beverly McGarvey. She looks after content, obviously, and Jared Villani, he looks after commercial and operations. So you've got these 3 big entities. They're your stakeholders. But really, they often feud, and what they want is different. And so you're right in the middle of that.
Imagine that first meeting. Hello, my name's Karen. Where are you from? 9. What about you? 10. And you? 7. What have I got myself into?
Are we all agreed?
That's
no, we're
right.
not. Okay.
Let's take a vote on that. Hold on, it's binary. How can we have 4 different opinions when it's a yes-no vote?
So what a job, right?
What a job. Good luck to her.
And look, I think it's great for media, right, to have the audience measurement system. VOZ, is the relatively new system of measuring all of the television audiences across the country. It's a really important tool for media and marketers to be able to know the audience they reach, where they reach them, and how they reach them. Michael, you've had plenty of involvement in audience measurement, including with radio and digital audio. What do you see as Karen's priorities when she gets into OzTam?
Well, I'm seeing 2 things. First of all, number one is the fact that 11th of October is the day that I just heard Adam Lang use an acronym, VOZ, without flinching.
That's its name.
Yeah, but it's Virtual Australia, right?
Did you hear him earlier on, though, talk about BVOD?
Yes.
But he actually said online delivered broadcaster content, BVOD. But online delivered broadcaster content, BVOD isn't the acronym for online delivered broadcast content.
No, usually I'm the pedant.
You've taught us well. Sorry, anyway. Go on, Michael. He's done it twice so far. It's good.
It's actually quite satisfying watching this happen, isn't it? It's just
he's squirming over there. He is squirming.
Yes, it's actually quite funny. But really, I mean, the thing is, consistency of delivery and providing this data is just so vital because everybody watches it, and it is so important. You said this yourself, Adam, that this is just absolutely vital as a tool for marketers. It's a tool kind of used widely within these companies, and watching ratings is almost like a national sport in Australia. Have you noticed just the obsession with say after the AFL Grand Final or the NRL Grand Final or after the Melbourne Cup or after kind of the block finale or the voice finale or any kind of one of those, the obsession with the TV ratings the next day is just quite extraordinary.
Michael, remember James Warburton, head of 7 this week, told Nathan Jolly that 7 had won the year's ratings 8 weeks out. Like
it's the third quarter. He's calling a win.
Yeah.
The problem is he might be right though. Anyway,
I suspect he might. But isn't it fantastic the way you can cut? And Adam, you would have experienced this. Just that if you look deep enough into any ratings, any audience measurement, you can find plenty of wins for anybody as soon as you get as you dive into the demographics.
You can, and I think. Look, I know we have to be quick, Michael, but aside from getting into a new role, Karen Halligan enters into OzTam. Getting the stakeholders aligned, it's a really critical role to have a cohesive voice to industry. And I think that'll be a fascinating thing to see how she develops that. The audience measurement with Voz and how that develops, but also we know from earlier stories on Mumbrella that there is a booking tool, a booking platform for advertisers to be able to see the audiences on Voz and buy against them. And that is work in progress towards next year. And I think not only sort of measuring the audience, but turning that into an easy booking platform will be a critical thing for that role to deliver.
Adam, do you have a favourite advertising acronym?
See, Michael, we lost you about 4 minutes ago when we started talking acronyms. Now, if I asked you what did Adam just say, you'd probably go VOZ or BVOZ.
I did hear one VOZ in there. I was counting, and I was hoping we'd maybe get another BVOD.
Yeah, we're going to ignore that question. Can I just make one quick comment? One thing that Karen Halligan has got going for her, she's working with a bunch of people who are under duress. Their sector is in a more difficult competitive position than it has ever been in. So
true.
There is so many more reasons for 9, 7, 10 to work together than there ever has been. So hopefully she can take advantage of that.
Never lose the opportunity in the crisis.
That's right.
Oh,
that's right.
Inspiring us all, Adam Lang.
Churchillian.
Now, of course, Adam, you have stolen time from Sean to do that, leaving Sean with 14 seconds for his story.
Sorry.
We will extend it by another minute or two. Sean, take it away. What's your story today?
Well, this week we've written at Mumbrella a couple of stories. Joe Aston, the Rear Window columnist at the Financial Review, announced that he would be leaving the masthead last Friday. So I just wrote a quick story on what it was like to manage Joe Aston. I was his boss of sorts. I don't think anyone's ever Joe's boss, to be perfectly honest, but I was in name, I was his boss for a couple of years there. And he is incredibly high profile. He is incredibly capable. He can be incredibly difficult to work with. That's one story. The other one was Nick McKenzie. I chatted to Nick McKenzie, who I think is right now the best investigative reporter in the country. He's the guy with Chris Masters who did the Ben Roberts-Smith stuff back in 2017. That started. We've heard the defamation case this year, obviously. He infiltrated neo-Nazis. He uncovered a fraud at the central bank, the Reserve Bank, or a subsidiary of the Reserve Bank. He's done incredible work, and I spoke to him about what drives him, but also whether he gets scared. And I said, "Are you ever fearful?" And within a split second, he said, "Yeah, absolutely." He said, "There's the defamation stuff, but what about me? What about my family? I fear for that." And he said, "When you push neo-Nazis, you're going to get neo-Nazis pushing you back. When you push what's really happened in a war and what a supposed war hero did, you're going to get pushback from supporters of that war hero." Really fascinating to talk to Nick about it. Funnily enough, I was just talking to him. He was in the car at the time. He was taking his kids to some function when I was talking to him. And, it really brought home to me this guy who uncovers some of the greatest injustices in our community was just taking his kids to the park, while he was talking to me. And it was kind of the subject matter and what he was doing. There was such an interesting kind of juxtaposition there.
Sean, I mentioned at the top of the show that we'd be looking at kind of what two of Australia's best journalists have in common. What do you think it is? Would it be courage kind of thing?
Fearless?
Slightly different.
Fearless.
Yeah.
So both of them are totally fearless. Joe Aston, totally fearless. Joe Aston brought people to account. I mean, Alan Joyce is an example. Alex Malley from the CPA Australia. He brought people to account in the business world like no one else. Nick is exactly the same. Totally fearless. Work incredibly hard. So they are always on. I don't know how people live with them because they are always on, and they are both smart. You know, you can't. I've worked with a lot of journalists, and those two are two of the smartest journalists I've ever worked with. And I think that's kind of what they've got in common, what makes them stand out.
Sean, you might not take this for granted, but you certainly would have a different appreciation than me. You are a journalist. I'd say your caliber as a journalist is equal to theirs. I have.
Oh, Adam, that is very generous, but I'm nowhere near their league. No, I mean that. That's not false modesty. They are above and beyond.
Well, I think that is very you to be that self-effacing. But as a consumer of writing, that is my view, and I always look forward to Joe Aston's columns. There's this sense of, anxiety when you go, what's he going to say now? Yeah. With Nick McKenzie, the same, because he probably wasn't as provocative or isn't as provocative, but is the depth of coverage and thought.
Phenomenal.
Now, all three of you, just the way you write, the word smithing that you can do that I can't is something that I hold very dear. But I'm going to miss reading Joe's work. I really am. And I'm going to continue to look for the next one. Who might it be?
Yeah. There's lots of great journalists out there. I think Joe, though, in my view, some people hated him. He wasn't always right? He did stuff wrong without a doubt. But as a business columnist, I don't think there's ever been a better business columnist than Joe Aston, or at least as compelling a business journalist as Joe Aston.
Seems like a pretty good place to wrap things up. I think that's actually everyone had extra time today, so it was very kind of fair, very magnanimous.
Especially you.
Oh, I mean,
not that I'm holding on to that, Mickey T. It's okay with me. It's all right.
Well, thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
Slightly kind of ending on a slightly snarky note now, aren't we? This is the Mumbrellacast. Remember to hit follow on the podcast.
Do you want to thank yourself, Michael?
In fact, I'd like to thank Michael.
Oh, there we go. Finally, someone does it.
Michael, thanks for your contribution.
You know what? You're both welcome.
You've been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Head along to mumbrella.com.au for more info on everything that we've talked about, and definitely check out those two pieces by Sean on there about what it's like to manage Joe Aston and also the interview with Nick McKenzie. They are both cracking reads. Leave a review for the podcast as well. That's always very much appreciated. Thank you very much for your company. See you next time.